confusing to anyone. No, it is. It's miserable to have them. Nothing? Okay. It's in here, yeah.
Are also paradoxically attracted to it.
It's a great question. I don't know the answer to it. There are moments I sit in my office, I have nothing to do, so I watch boxing, particularly Mike Tyson, because he used to just beat the crap out of people. You know, no one would be able to stand in the ring with him for more than a couple of minutes. You know, then of course I come to class and talk about compassion and kindness and forgiveness. So I think there is just this element of love and hate inside us. You know, like you get stuck in the highway, bumper to bumper, you get to the scene of the accident, and there are like 5 bodies just laying on the ground. And you kind of just slow down even more to watch all that, you know. I don't know. Maybe you should read a little Aristotle. Yes. Yeah, he had something to say about that. Yeah, but it's a great question. It's just not in my mood right now. Sorry. Anyone else with anything? Barak? Good morning. Well, it has to be filtered through me, so if I don't like it. The what? No, what is that? What's the question? Feelings for my past relationships? Well, when I get into fights with my wife, I say, oh, maybe I should have been with Jack. Or when I have a difficult time with my kids, I said, oh, it would have been nice, much better to just have stayed single. If things are going good in any aspect of life, you know, I mean, it's like you minding your own business, listening to good music, taking a walk around the lake, and then you see this tiny little kid crying, and the mother or the father is just standing right there. Instead of them running to the kid and maybe embracing them, they'll smack them some more. And all of a sudden your mood changes. You begin to reflect about parenthood, about children, about the world, about what Antoine talks about all the time, the injustice of it all. You're in a great mood, having a great time with your friends. You see a cop, you know, pulling out a kid, beating the crap out of him, and all of a sudden things begin to change for you. Your fun goes away, disappears, and you begin to be a bit more serious about life. So whenever there is a disturbance in, I suppose, the pleasures you're having in life, all of a sudden everything stops. And then you begin to think. You know, I don't know if you're in a relationship, but no relationship is easy. And oftentimes when you get into some confrontation, disagreement, and it happens to be somewhat serious, you begin to have some doubts. And it's just part of life. I like to teach. I mean, I like teaching, but I think about retirement every single day. Yeah, so the more you're able to distract yourself, the less pain you'll encounter. If you think you're not a very nice looking guy, for example, don't have too many mirrors in your house. And always hang out with people who tell you how attractive you are. Because the moment you have a friend who begins to criticize you, then your entire world falls apart. So, yeah.
I was just going to say you mentioned compassion and forgiveness. I don't know. You said we haven't talked much about it, so really strong stance.
First of all, it depends what kind of a relationship we're talking about. If we're talking about the romantic one, if we're talking about the parental one, if we're talking about friendships, if we're talking about student teachers, such as like, you come to my office and you say, I'm sorry, I missed an assignment. I know it's an F. Is there any way I can make it up? So you have a lot of things to consider. In terms of, I think, parental, what usually happens is fathers and mothers are very, very, very different. The feminine, the masculine part. If you read the Quran, there are about a few chapters in the book, and they all start with saying that God has two components. One is mercy, the other is compassion. Mercy is masculine, compassion is feminine. And oftentimes one is tempered by the presence of the other, Fathers have a very difficult time forgiving. It's not that they won't, they just have a difficult time to forgive. My children are, as far as I know, heterosexual. So, and I come from what we consider to be a shame culture. And the element of shame has to do with you being communal. In other words, you carry your parents' reputation on your back. If I do something in Oakland and it's tasteless and my mom, gets the news, there's a good chance that her reputation will be tarnished in Sacramento or Roseville. So every time someone runs into her, she's going to, they're going to tell her, oh, Mrs. Sabzori, I'm so sorry to hear that your son is a scumbag, right? So because I come from a shame culture, I have to answer to a lot of people just in case something goes wrong. Now, I was also born some 6 decades ago, which means that some of the language that is common to people now were not common to us. Okay, so if my son was to come to me or my daughter and say, Dad, I'm gay. Okay, first, parents have a narrative that when my kid turns to be 20 or 30 or 40, they'll be married, they'll have children, I'll be a grandfather or this or that. So the moment I hear a statement that goes against the narrative that all parents make, okay, depending on my background again, how open, receptive I am, there's a good chance that my world is going to be turned upside down. Okay. Now, all the plans I had for my life and my relationship with my son or my daughter, they're shifted. And it takes time to kind of adjust. Remember, you and I have narratives that you're going to come to school, you're going to stay here for 15 weeks, and you're going to get a passing grade, and that gets you a little bit more closer to graduation. So that's a story you created before even the semester began. Now, the moment that story doesn't mesh out well, something is going to happen to your narrative. In other words, you will have a sense of loss. And with every loss, there's going to be some sadness, there's going to be some regret with the passage of time, and you want to make it up, which means that's a sort of repentance, which means that when the new semester comes forth, instead of only taking 6 units, you'll take 26 units. Okay. Now, the next thing I have to consider with this news that my son or my daughter give me is that, okay, how am I going to break this news to my parents? Am I going to hide it from them? You know, hello. And so there is also another aspect, which is we have had for the past maybe 5,000 years of recorded history this idea that, you know, a man looks at a woman, becomes attracted. A woman looks at a man, she becomes attracted. Two women don't mesh well, two men don't mesh well. And if they did, that was like the ancient time in Greece or maybe some parts of Egypt. It's not part of the Christian Western heritage. Okay. So what culture does, it creates these narratives for you that brings about psychological stability. We just celebrated 6 years of anniversary. That's a great amount of stability. If she was to go home all of a sudden and there are some suitcases by the door, she's going to ask, what the hell is this? Well, this is my gift to you on our anniversary. I'm leaving you, right? That stability, forgive me, I hope it doesn't happen, but you never know. So that stability goes away. So all of us in this class, the thing we're looking for most importantly is stability, constancy, repetition. You know, they're important. And I'm going to look at my son who has broadcasted that he's not straight, and I'm going to, as a parent, I worry. What's going to happen to their future? Are they going to find the right companion? You know, with all the sorts of crazy language that this culture keeps inventing and injecting in people's throat or psyches, how are they going to deal with all these changes that they're going through, that parents are going through, that society are going to look at them and they're not going to find them very digestible, perhaps, you know. And for communities to create healthy narratives, it takes many, 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 many centuries. You can't just go out with someone after 3 weeks and say, we're in a great relationship. It doesn't work. You have to be with someone. It's a grinding process that takes about maybe 10, 15 years. And then when those years are over, you can say, now we're in a place of stability. You know, I don't know if you've been to Chinatown. I know your question was something different, and I'm always like going to all over the place. It's run by the Asians. All the shops are. If you happen to be, if your skin color is different, if you look different, you have to go to a special board. You have to kind of tell them, I'm black or I'm brown, I want to open shop here. There's a good chance they're going to say no. Because now you get a different set of customers. All of a sudden you have different shop owners. Now the stability that's been in Chinatown, for example, for the past like 20, 30, 40, 50 years, now it's a little rocky. So we don't do well too much with diversity and integration in as much as it's everywhere now. The truth is we don't work well with them. And that's what culture does. It protects people's psyche by making sure new things don't enter, you know. And so I sit back, look at my son and say, okay, how the hell am I going to do this? There's a good chance I'm going to be angry, okay? Am I going to now live in conflict? Absolutely. Am I going to have sleepless nights? Definitely. Is it going to be easy for me to look at my son and forgive him for the news he broke to me? Probably not. Is it going to take me a while? Yes. How long? I don't really know. How am I going to break the news to my parents? Are they going to punish me, telling me about this because you live in Oakland, it's because of this, it's because of that? Now I have to carry more stuff on my shoulder, you know. Is there going to come a time where the dust will settle? Hello, hello. I think so. I just don't know when. Once the dust settles, am I going to look at my son or my daughter differently? Absolutely. Am I going to look at them and say, it's just another human being? All human beings are alone. They want to have a companion in life. Life is tough. They need a support system, whether straight or gay or bi, whatever you want to label yourself as, you need a support system, you know. And I don't know when I'm going to get there. But once I do get there, now you have a volcano of compassion erupting all around me and over me, through me. And the things I probably wouldn't do for my other child, who follows the status quo, now I do for my other child. One of the things you need to understand about forgiveness is that, first of all, it's an act of judgment. In other words, you have done something. Whatever it is that you have done offends me, disturbs me. I pass a judgment on your action, and I find your action immoral, unethical, worthless. So I try to come down on you really, really hard and reprimand you. Okay. So most of the emotions that we have, not most of them, in fact, all of them, are really an act of judgment. Why do I need to exercise compassion? Well, there is something about you that makes me look at you and say, I have pity for you. So out of compassion, I go to Barnes and Nobles, or I go to In-N-Out, buy you a number 3 and give you some food to eat. It's a judgment, but it's a good judgment. There's nothing wrong with it. Judgments are not bad as long as, it benefits both parties. Am I doing an action because I'm altruistic? No. Your poverty makes me feel guilty for my privilege. So one of the ways I forgive myself for being poor is I go to In-N-Out, I spend $20 on you, a complete stranger. That's a compassion I give to you, but that compassion also baptizes my privilege. Forgiveness is really, 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 really tough because it requires a great amount of understanding. It's going to take me a long time to look at my child who has broke some news to me, to kind of understand what the hell is going on inside his or her psyche. Understand the influences, understand biology, understand neurology, understand the culture in which he lives, understand all the uncertainties. Understand the fact that as a kid, he wants the support of his parents, but his parents are out. They're nowhere to be found, psychologically, emotionally speaking, because they have to adjust to this news. And so, am I going to at times feel guilty for not being able to accept this news? At a certain point, I have to forgive myself for all the awful things I've done to my kid. But by the time I knock on his door and say, son or daughter, I understand, there's a good chance that they're not going to be in the right place to forgive me. So it takes a long time for people to really come to a great amount of understanding, to kind of overcome certain emotions that are just toxic in any relationship. Now, it doesn't mean that just because you forgive and just because you have a great amount of compassion inside you, you should stay in the relationship. You understand? And instead of projecting your compassion towards another, you give it to yourself and you walk away. When George Bush was in the office, the son of Herbert, I think he went to Yale. And from the way he speaks, he is much more eloquent than Trump is. I would always say that if those instructors that he had, professors at Yale, if they had failed him in a couple of his classes, maybe he would have been forced to read more books, to think more thoughts, to write better essays. And so when he would become the president, he would be a bit more eloquent. He wouldn't be a complete joke. So sometimes giving a C as a form of compassion, in fact, backfires. So you have to be really, 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 really insightful and wise. And I don't know how those things come about for you to exercise the right kind of forgiveness and the right kind of compassion. Sometimes you give too much compassion and the addiction just grows. Depression becomes chronic. You know, sometimes it's good to just slap someone. Don't cry. Punch him in the face. Any one else before Ashley?
Um, you talked like for a second about altruism.
Yeah.
And it made me think of this notion that like there's no such thing as an altruistic act. And I just wonder what you thought about that. Do you agree?
So let's talk about this guy that many of you have heard of. His name probably JC. You guys know who JC is?
Right.
Yes. You would think that this man has a great amount of compassion and forgiveness, and he's altruistic. He never does anything for himself, but always for other people. But the truth is, you want to see your own reflection in the things that you do and the people around you. And when you don't see your own reflection, when a mirror doesn't reflect back the image that you like to see, you kind of go to a different mirror, or you grab your dustpan and or a towel and you clean, the dust from the mirror so it can reflect a bit better of who and what you are. I think because of the organisms that we are, there is always going to be an element of selfishness involved. Always. Okay. Selfishness is not a problem. In fact, it's really, 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 really good to be selfish. The question is, what kind of selfishness do you want to have inside you? There are lots of immigrants, say from India, from Africa, from the Middle East, who leave their parents, leave their culture, even though the parents are poor and have nothing. They come to America and they work really, really hard. I mean, they abandon everyone and everything. And as a parent or as a sibling or as a friend, you could look at them and say, how could you be so selfish? Leaving your parents who are like close to death. You're going to go to America, party and do this and do that. Why? Just stay here, take care of your parents. And the guy says no. And there is a purpose, an intention behind him leaving his parents or his country. Okay. He says, my country doesn't offer me any hope. I want to just leave. And that's why Middle Easterners leave. I mean, for people like me from Iran, you leave Iran, not because you don't like your country, not because you don't like the culture, not because you don't like your parents. There is no hope. You can't get a job. It takes 10 years for you to be admitted to school, and you need to be really, really rich to go to school. And even if you graduate, there is no job to be had. So what usually happens is people migrate to here, to America. And that's a very selfish act. But once they get their degrees, whether it's a master's or a PhD, they become an engineer or a doctor, they go back home. And what happens is now they go back. I mean, the first part is they're very, very selfish. They want to prosper, but they also know that once they accomplish their goal, they're going to go back. Now, when they go back, they're going to be very rich. Rich in the sense that they have degrees, they have knowledge, they have information, they have wisdom. They bring something from the West and inject it down to the East. Now, there is a different kind of selfishness. There is a guy whose name is Ali Shariati. He had his PhD from Sorbonne in sociology. I think he was the sole person, single-handedly, at least he sparked the revolution in 1979. And he brought to Iran all these Western ideas about justice. And by Western, I don't mean American. I mean people like Rousseau, people like Plato. And little by, or especially Karl Marx. And little by little, he created this niche in the Persian culture, the intellectuals, the leftists. And I think it was really good in some ways. I mean, bad in some ways, because revolution is never easy, because you turn everything upside down. People's lives become a complete mess for a long, long time, especially if the revolution happens to be bloody, which it was. Where parents have to carry the corpses of their kids to the grave. But the point is, you have different kinds of selfishnesses. And the question is, well, what kind of selfishness do you want to have? Imagine what you've done this morning. Being in bed is wonderful. You know, it's cold out. It's a stupid class. This class is. I go all over the place. There is no connection of ideas to anything really. I just come, ramble, talk about nonsense, and go home. Now, it may be that you guys assume that I'm talking about something really profound, but I really am not. Okay. So you have to choose. There's a selfishness inside that says, Ashley, you're no longer 20. You're 30. You're getting a little older, a little uglier. You know, you dropped out of school long time ago. Don't be lazy. In other words, there's a selfishness to you that's lazy, slothful. And so you need to kind of punish that part of you, that selfishness that says, stay in bed, relax. Your companion is home. She has a day off. Have coffee with her. Go on college. Get some waffles. Walk around. Hold hands. Have a beautiful time. There is this other part of you says, there's another part of Ashley, okay, a bit more mature, no, a bit more wise and insightful, understands the past relatively well and says, no, don't stay in bed. Get the hell up. Take a shower. Go to class. It sucks, but go to class because it gets you this much closer to graduation. So it's great to be selfish. You know, the question is, well, what kind of selfishness are we talking about? What self do you want to nourish? What self do you want to protect? What self do you want to push down? And what self do you want to resurrect? You know, which means the following, that there are all these different selves inside us. And you have to be profoundly insightful to figure out which self are you tired of, or which selves, and you're at what stage in life. You know, do you want to be the self that's concrete? Do you want to be a self that takes information, then forgets? Do you want to be a self that has good soil, but your life is so busy that whatever good comes into your life, it just gets destroyed? Or do you want to be a self that understands what a good seed is and what a bad seed is, and gets rid of the bad ones? You know, it's great to smoke, and it's great to drink, and it's great to have sex with just anyone that walks, right? But once you've been there, once you've done that, once you understand temptation, once you understand desire, how it comes, how it plays out, how it leaves, and after a while, you know, with some education, and I'm not talking about going to school like this, with some introspection, you will kind of discover, well, what things about yourself you want to protect and what things about yourself you want to give up. There is nothing wrong with Jesus saying, I'm really, really selfish. I mean, consider, for example, if I was to, this is perhaps one of the most arrogant human beings who's ever walked this planet. In the Gospel of Mark, Jesus refers to himself only twice. Only twice. I am, only twice. In the Gospel of Matthew, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 3-4 times. In the Gospel of Luke, maybe 7 times. In the Gospel of John, the story is very, very different. He talks about himself. It's usually considered the I am gospel. I am the bread. I am the light. Almost 50 times. This is a good self to have. It's good to come to a place where you say, you know what? In me lives creativity. In me lives inspiration. Why do you read books? Why do you go to workshops? I am like Costco, he says. You know, look at me and there it is. Creativity, spirituality just oozes out of me. Why the hell would you want to go to a church? Are you stupid? You know, and that's a really good self to have. Just in case you realize you want that kind of a self, but there is no one around, well, what you need to do is read books or be around people who bring about the different part of you, a part of you that is you enjoy, but it's also very difficult to bring to the surface and keep on the surface, because it dismantles or destroys all these other pathetic desires connected to different selves, if that makes any sense. So altruism is really, really good. I mean, look, imagine you have like a one-night stand with someone. Okay. Or imagine you have sex with someone that you really, really enjoy and perhaps you want to be in a long-term relationship with. It's both sex, but the intentions are different. The consequences are different. What you reap is different. Okay. Is it true that some people are just one-night standers? Yeah, they're just not there yet to demand or desire a long-term relationship. So, yeah, it's good to be selfish. Really good to be selfish. Just make sure you have the right self, which is tough. Really tough. Nearly impossible. Not practical. It's actually bad for your life. Can I tell you a story? Is that okay? Plato is a 17-year-old kid. For those you may not know, I know I'm supposed to talk about intro to philosophy, talk about some of the great thinkers. His mother is a very religious woman. His father is a lawyer. His father is also a politician. Parents want their kids, for the most part, to be like them. They project, and they project all the good things for their kids. Okay. The tragedy that happened in Plato's life is that one day as he's walking, he runs into this strange fellow. You know, the age difference between Socrates and Plato is about maybe 30 to 50 years. You know, history gives us different numbers. In 20 minutes' time, everything about Plato turns upside down. He no longer wants to be a lawyer. He no longer wants to go into politics. In fact, he's a kid who has won 3 plays, 3 years in a row, because it was a competition that they had in ancient Athens. You know, you submit your plays to a committee, the committee reads them, and if they like it, what you've done, they'll give you a prize. And Plato has won this gift 3 years in a row. So you're kind of grown with the idea, or raised with the idea that you're going to be a politician. You're also raised with the idea that you're going to become a lawyer. You're going to be rich. You're going to get married. You're going to do all sorts of wonderful things. You're going to buy a big house, buy 10 Teslas. He runs into Socrates. Socrates doesn't care about money. Socrates doesn't care about social status. The only thing Socrates cares about is the way you think. If you're able to get rid of the junk in your emotions, the junk in your thinking, then hopefully, if you have the capacity, your soul will come out. That's what Socrates wants to do. So what Socrates does is every day he goes into the city and he talks to people. He wants to find his own reflection in another human being, and eventually he finds it in this young kid named Plato. Now, there is all these mysterious things that happen between a student and a teacher. And I suppose tragically for Plato's parents, Plato was a paperclip and Socrates was a magnet, and Plato slowly gravitates towards Socrates. Little by little, Plato becomes like Socrates, thinks like Socrates, walks like Socrates, loses complete interest in politics and society and all those things that their parents want him to do. That's a good self to have. Was Socrates selfish in ruining Plato's life? Absolutely. Did it take Plato a long time to figure out why his life was ruined? Yeah. But the end result is that there's a guy, some 2,000 years ago, who's come to realize perhaps the beauty of being able to reflect about things and then to write those reflections in a very articulate, creative way. We have the dialogues for about 2,500 years. It's a gift. It really is. It talks about everything. It's like Costco. For those in this class who like to read and enjoy literature, Plato is a one-stop shop or one-shop stop, however you want to say it. Are we glad that Socrates exercised a good amount of selfishness? Yeah. Was he altruistic? No, but who cares? So next time you see a homeless person and you want to give him 20 and all of a sudden the whore of Athens, doubt, reflection comes in and says, are you doing it for him or are you doing it for yourself? Just drive those ideas out. Toss them out, trash them. Just give them 20. Who cares if it benefits you? Those questions are meant for philosophy classes. And this is not one of those. Gerardo, right? Yes, I'm so sorry. Gerardo.
Professor, philosopher Rachel born in Cave?
Cave? I think without making it philosophical, let me perhaps give it to you this way. Imagine that you and I meet at a coffee shop. Our eyes meet. And there is a thing that is in Hindu philosophy. They call it sing. I don't know how it's spelled. Consider it to be some sort of a liquid. Okay. I look at you and all of a sudden there is this intense attraction. And the truth is, it's not about sex. I don't know what part of me desires to merge with you. All I know is that I am immensely attracted to you. Now, the force of this attraction ultimately produces sex, okay? But that sex ultimately gets categorized as, is it just body to body? Is it the usage of body and merging of the emotions? Because the higher you go, the deeper you go, the more solid your relationship is going to be, okay? Now, all those things aside, let's say our eyes meet, I'm attracted, you're attracted, and 2 weeks later we're holding hands. Okay. Now, there is the politics of life. You gotta go to Costco, vacuum the house, take out the trash. Little by little, Ashley knows this really, really well. Little by little, I look at you and I'm no longer inspired. If anything, I should say, I'm inspired by disgust. I don't want to be around you. I don't want to see you, but I like you. I love you, I'm just not in love with you. You know, that's modern stuff that people say. The only thing that keeps my life and your life going, or our relationship going, are the shadows that we worship. I call you and say, hey, why don't we go to Costco today? You say, yeah, let's do it. Why don't we go to Home Depot and get some plants? Yeah, let's do it. Our vacuum doesn't work. Let's go to Costco and buy a brand new vacuum. Yeah, let's do it. You didn't take out the trash. And then comes Valentine's. Another shitty event. Even though I'm disgusted by you, you say to me, Amir, Valentine's is coming. So what the hell is that? Valentine's. Oh, yes, of course. I sit in my car, and by my lonesome, I drive my sari behind to CVX, or CVR, or Safeway, or Trader Joe's, or some forsaken place. And I look at this section, Valentine's cards. But while I'm driving, I'm screaming all these profanities. Really don't want to do this. America sucks. I hate myself. I hate him or her. It's a moment of authenticity. I begin to see myself really, really clearly, and I hate the fact I'm doing this. But I do it nevertheless. And of course, I buy some chocolates, some flowers. We go to the bedroom, you fake it, I fake it. Yeah. And it's a great relationship, don't get me wrong. It's wonderful. Because most of life really is how well you can fake it. Okay? And then I'm walking to school. And I run into Justin. all of a sudden, and you know what life does, right? Once you fall in love, you grow wings. You go all the way to the sun, and it melts you. It melts away all the shitty things that life has injected inside you. And you don't need to make any effort. You sit and write poetry. Becoming a sacrificial lamb, very, very easy. You sit by the phone for 10 hours waiting for my call, or I wait for your call. But then life, little by little, takes all those things away. And every time, from that point on, every time you make sacrifices, you hate yourself. And you hate your companion for pushing you into becoming a sacrificial lamb when in fact you don't want to. You know, it's kind of like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane or on the cross. You know, let this guy pass by me. I don't want to do this anymore. Fuck you, right? And you and I have been together for about 20 years, 10 years, 5 years, in her case, 6 years. And I run into Justin. I don't know what happens. I look into his eyes and he looks into mine, and all of a sudden, I see something, I feel something behind me, and I look, around, and it's my wings. They've come back to life. And all the memories, they kind of storm forward. I begin to remember how it feels to live with passion, to be creative, to be inspired, to be courageous and daring, to go to my companion, which is you, and say, I don't want to be with you anymore. Has he given me a yes answer? No. I don't care about his yes answer. All I know is that when I look at you, I don't feel an ounce of life. The passion that Justin creates inside me is kind of like when Moses comes and breaks all the chains and the Hebrews are free now. He frees me from the bondage created by life. And even though he gives me nothing but uncertainty, I pursue it. So I suppose you could consider the allegory of the cave to be just that. It's, you're born, you're creative, you're honest. There is this poem by Omar Khayyam, پاک از عدم آمدیم و ناپاک شدیم آسوده برآمدیم و غمناک شدیم, that we came into life unburdened. You see infants, they laugh all the time. And then when they scream for the right things. My belly aches, give me some food, embrace me for 10 minutes, put me to bed. It's not like I want a Tesla or I lost my watch. Kids don't give a care about those things, right? And then as you slowly move into adulthood, you become contaminated. And by adulthood, I mean the moment you become like 3, right? And depending on your parents, their abuse lives now inside you. All the stupid advertisement that America creates go inside you. Your heroes become different, and then you compare and contrast. There's an 18-year-old getting a PhD. There is like a 40-year-old, you're still step 1. And now you have emotions you never had before. So that's what happens to all of us. We become contaminated. We become burdened by all these ridiculous things. And then he walks into my life and he unburdens me. All of a sudden, living in a tent sounds really, really good. Having to wait by the phone for 10 hours, it's a great feeling. Coming to class because I wanted to get an A, but now that I'm in love with Justin, I don't give a shit about the A. I just sit here daydreaming about Justin. How often do you get freed from the cave and get closer to the light? Not very often. But despite me romanticizing all of this, you need to understand it's devastating. It's one of the worst lives or worst moments you could ever have in your life. You're like a 30-year-old human being. All you want in your life is stability. A relatively decent companionship, a steady job. You don't want your emotions to go up and down all the time, You You don't want to go through mood swings. And the problem with escaping life or walking away from life is that your emotions are all over the place. You can't focus on anything because nothing really means anything. Everything becomes worthless. Why do you think I'm leaving you for him? You have zero value for me. Your emotions have zero value for me. You can't move me. Oh. Lilac? Anything? Antoine.
Are people capable of moral?
First you feel. First you feel. First you feel. If the feeling is really, really strong, then you act. When the pleasure goes away, then you reflect. There's also this other scenario. First you feel. That's the foundation of life. First you feel. If the feelings go against the foundation of who and what you are, you're not going to take action. You will begin to have conflict. And conflict is caused by feeling, I shouldn't be feeling this way. Now you begin to think. Now, if the power of your reflection is much more stronger than the intensity of emotions, the emotions will be crushed. If, on the other hand, the emotions, which is the powerhouse of temptation, and there's nothing wrong with it, there's nothing bad about it. Remember, lust is good. Envy is good. Jealousy is good. Okay? Yeah, so. Robert?
So if all those things are good, why are they labeled as such negative things?
Miseducation. Let me give you an example. May I? Okay. That's Ella in front of you. Ella, do you mind turning around? That's Robert. Huh? Robert, you're single? In this scenario, you are. Oh, let's say you're not single. Ella happens to be your better part. She's your companion. And Ella, why are you smiling? I know he's no good for you, but nevertheless, it's just a story. Now, let's say the two of you have been together for 5 years. Is that okay? What have you done in the past 5 years, Robert? You've built a house with her. I'm not talking about like a house built of cinder blocks and mortar and rebars, right? You guys have held hands together. You've met her parents. You guys play tennis together. You sit and talk. You have sex. You go out and have party. You know, you do lots of things together. In the past 5 years, what you have done, you have created psychological stories. That's a house. She brings you stability as you bring her stability. That's a house. Do you have a front door to your house, Robert? Do you lock it? Why? Is it because you mistrust people? Absolutely. Do you think that if your door was to be open, people would just take things? Definitely. Do you like the things you have? Yeah. Are you protective of those things? Yeah. You're not Jesus Christ. You don't live in a tent. Now, you own Ella. She's like a cow or a cat or a cell phone. You own her. You own her because in her lives your stories. And the stories make you who you are. Do you know why black people are angry? You take someone's story and you want to inject your own story into them. It's like changing the software. It doesn't work. Now, she belongs to you as you belong to her. Now, imagine if I was to look at Ella. Hi, Ella. How about coffee after class? How's that going to make you feel? Good? There you go. What are you going to do? You're going to look at me. You're going to talk to me after class. Maybe you want to kick my ass. Why? She is your possession. She is your future. She is your past. She is your present.
Okay, I see what you're saying now.
Jealousy is good. Fucking hippies. Let me just give me a minute. Thank you, Cynthia. Now, when jealousy becomes abusive, the story is different. Like you guys have been talking about breaking up for the past like 4 years. You know, she wants to like leave you, but she doesn't really have that opportunity very often. And all of a sudden, I inspire that. And the nice thing about inspiration is that you know, when I first came to this country, we had no food and no money. I was inspired to steal, and I did. Inspiration gives you courage. You become brave in ways you didn't know that you could. And so you possess her in all the wrong ways. There is no future. You just don't want to let her go. Yeah. So it really depends how you want to be jealous. I mean, all these things are just tools or ingredients or spices. When you put too much spice in a dish, it just turns out to be bad. You know, lust is really good because what is lust really? I look at your mustache and I say, wow, I wonder how that would look on me. That's lust. It does. I was just trying to be nice. You know. And so what that lust does is I'll go home and I'll say, you know what? I'm just not going to shave for a couple of days, see how that looks. It's attraction. Greed is good. I mean, look at Ella. Yuck. She goes on the tennis court every morning at 6. She wants to perfect her game. That's being greedy. Why can't you just accept the way you are? Because the way you are sucks. It's incomplete. It's good to be greedy for all the right reasons. Why the hell would you just want to be you? Is it, Robert, are we good? Yeah. Jacob? Sorry. Irvin, I apologize. Like anger? You know, Donald Trump paid $750 in taxes a few years ago. Just pisses you off. And as a white guy living in America, privileged, he comes on TV and he says, we're going to build Palestine or Gaza, and the Palestinians can return home. And that makes you angry, especially someone from the Middle East like me. Who the fuck does he think he is? Now, of course, if you're the Buddha or some Jewish or Christian, you'd look at me and say, why are you so angry? Because my anger has roots in justice. I have every right to be fucking angry. You turn people's lives upside down, you push them out and you tell them you can't come back. There are people who work at In-N-Out, they pay $2,000, $3,000 in taxes, and you making billions, you only pay less than 1,000? I'm angry because there is injustice. I have every right to be angry. Again, anger is good to have if you use anger for the right reasons and if it's rooted in the right things. I wasted a lot of my life. Is it good for me to be angry? Yeah. Because now I torpedo forward to, right the wrongs. Every time you repent, every time you catch yourself having done something wrong, it makes you angry. Why? Because you've committed some sort of injustice to yourself, to the people in your life, to people around you. There's nothing wrong with that. Don't listen to these like hippies who come on TV and say, you know what? Don't be angry. Live in the present. That's a stupid way of doing business with people. Life is shit. It really is. Taking classes that you don't like, listening to instructors that you don't like, having a job that you don't like, paying too much rent, paying for too much food, or paying too much for food, writing essays you don't like to write, hanging out with people you don't like to hang out. I mean, some of in this class are waitresses and waiters. It sucks to serve people, especially when they're rude. What else can you do? I wasn't born because I chose to be born. I was forced down here. I didn't choose to have this particular temperament. It was forced upon me. And most of the people in my life, forced. Kids, forced. Marriage, forced. Old age, forced. You tell him, sit back and say anger is bad? No, anger is good. Just use it the right way. Don't be a Mike Tyson. I'm so angry right now. I mean, look at Lilac. Have you seen her hair? Look at me. I like to have hair like that. I can't. It's a good reason to be angry. What is it, Marco?
What would you say is the difference between ambition and greed?
In some ways they're the same, in some ways they're different. I usually get to school about 4:30 in the morning. I'm writing. It forces me to wake up. I feel like shit when I'm not creative. And writing is a source of inspiration for me. And so is the classroom. And I want more of it. I'm greedy for the things I'm ambitious about. And the only problem is, I am ambitious and I'm greedy, but you need to be inspired to be able to write. You need to have the juices of creativity, the muses. And sometimes they're not there, and you sit there. And instead of writing, you just kind of read the news, and your ambition goes away. Man, you walk away saying, man, I came here at 4 in the morning to kind of write, and here I am listening to this fucking guy named Trump. An 80-year-old man who can't even talk right about anything. So, first you become ambitious, then if you like the pleasure given to you by your pursuit, then you become greedy. And everything starts with lust, a sense of attraction towards something. Will you sometimes become gluttonous? You indulge? Yeah. Sometimes my wife says, come to the kitchen and help me out. I'm just writing. I don't listen to her. Am I indulging? Yes. Does it bother another human being? Yes. Do I catch myself? Yes. Do I sacrifice my writing for the kids? Yes. And as long as I don't reflect too much about those things, I'll be fine. But if I do reflect about the time that I give to other people, now I have this thing called resentment. Why do I need to give you my time? Well, you're my kid. You're my wife. You're my parent. You're my student. See, at least when I write, I can see what I'm writing. When you nod your head, I don't even know what the fuck you're understanding. Maybe you have Tourette's. I don't know. So, what is it? I'm sorry. Emlyn, do you have anything, any questions? Antoine.
Has feeling or instinct historically been a better tool, better yardstick for deciding what is right or wrong as compared to reason?
I think as you just age and as you begin to understand the complexities of life, you also begin to realize that you can't just go in life through your feelings. I mean, that's something we all of us understand in relationships or about relationships, that initially you just feel like you like someone and you give them your time, you give them your energy, you give them your youth, your money, and above all, your body. And time passes and things don't pan out and you're left with a good amount of like hurt feelings. And it takes you some time to recover, but you're not at a place where you can sit back and observe and understand. So after some recovery time, you go back into another relationship, again, revolving around feelings. And then things don't work out too well. And time passes and you say, I'm so tired of just making and going to relationships based on my feelings. Now you begin to sit and think, what exactly is it that you want? But for yourself. And what qualities do you want in your companion? Now you begin to kind of reflect. And then you baptize your feelings with the power of reflection. If you look at the way we came about, and I don't really know how human beings came down here, but let's just make a story that I was dropped from paradise. Okay, let's just do the Old Testament story. And I'm down here naked. Well, today it's a cold day. I can't just walk around naked. My body has its own sensory and reflective experience that imposes itself upon me. Amir, you're cold. It's too cold out there. Find yourself a cover of sorts. So I go find leaves. Then I say to myself, well, all these tigers and Godzillas or beasts are, eyeing me, trying to devour me. I look for some sort of a shelter, And I realize, well, I'm hungry. I'm not going to say, well, you know what, I'm vegan. Talking about a couple million years ago. There is no vegan at that time. You just eat anything that comes about. Maybe your wife, your kids, who the hell knows, And as society becomes a bit more complicated, as you begin to form communities, and you can have, imagine if people would just talk in this class without raising their hand, you would have chaos. So one of the things that social etiquette does is that, listen, you have a question, raise your hand. Just in case you speak out of term, I will shut you down. That's how you keep society intact without making it fall apart. And little by little, that's what makes society a bit more complicated. And then you have a hierarchy. And there are people, we just look at them and say, they're what they call the house of wisdom. Then there are the politicians. Then there are the workers, And you give your respect to different people, different degrees. The Inuits, Eskimos, certain parts. Sometimes the parents get a little old, and the Inuits have to travel from point A to point B because it just gets too cold, and food becomes very scarce. So what happens is you take your parents, you bag their stuff, and you say, let's leave. And you realize that your mom is limping, and your dad is also limping. You just leave them in the snow to die. There is no shame, there is no guilt, there is no anger. That's just what the culture does. You don't have those feelings. A good amount of how you feel and what you feel depends on the culture in which you live. I'm a 62-year-old almost man. Almost man. My father is 92. When I go there, when he comes out of the bedroom, I stand up and I greet him. It's like a complete stranger. It's just part of the culture. I can't romanticize how I feel about my father. The culture won't allow it. Now, you could feel a whole host of things. You may live in a culture that says, express your feelings. Or you may live in a culture that says, don't express your feelings. In a culture where you are taught not to express your feelings, there is no therapy. You don't need therapy. We don't have a Sigmund Freud who says you have repressed emotions. For thousands of years, people just see things and they hold things within. They're solid rock. Or rock solid. Here, the story is very different. The culture says, well, whatever it is that you're feeling, tell me. Like you go home, your companion is not like looking well. Here you say, honey, you look unhappy. What can I do for you? And then comes a therapy session. For the next 5 hours, the two of you are sitting at the dinner table and she's talking and you're listening. In a different culture, fix your face. Finished. Anyone else before we... What time is it? Oh, we are over. I'm so sorry to keep you. See you Thursday.